So, Don't Breathe 2 is directed by the co-writer of the first Don't Breathe movie, making his directorial debut. And once again, Stephen Lang returns as the blind man. This time he has an adopted daughter, and a bunch of criminals are coming in for unknown reasons, and he must defend himself and his new daughter. And we have a horror sequel to a movie that really didn't need a sequel, to be honest. Now, I liked the first Don't Breathe movie quite a bit. I thought it was very intense. I thought it was well acted for the most part. It was kind of clever in a lot of ways, like how it handled its characters and how it handled the scares throughout the entire movie. I could have done with that. I could have gone without the whole all the disgusting things that happened towards the end of the movie. But other than that, I still think it's an enjoyable and intriguing horror movie at least. So when I heard that they were doing a sequel to Don't Breathe, I just wasn't interested, to be honest. It didn't seem like a movie that needed a sequel. It just seemed very open and shut. Like, what else can you do? And they kept saying, oh, we have an amazing idea for the sequel. It's like, okay, what is it? And it just didn't sound that interesting. The only thing I was interested in was like, how does this guy have a daughter now? Please don't tell me they used the same method that they wanted to use in the first movie, if you know what I mean. So it was kind of like wondering about that. And overall, after seeing this movie, I kind of have to say, yeah, this movie just wasn't really all that necessary, to be honest. It was not good. I mean, there are some good things in this movie. First off, Stephen Lang as a blind man. He's good in the movie. I don't think he's as good as the first movie, but I thought he was good here as well. Also, the child actress in this movie, her name is Madeline Grace. I thought she was really good in the movie too. The third act of this movie is actually really good and it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of twists that I just did not see coming, which this movie feels very predictable for the most part, unfortunately, but oh well. There's a lot of, there's a lot of, like, twists in this movie that I just did not expect for this movie, but then again, there were a lot of surprises in the first movie. So I'm kind of glad that there's at least a bunch of surprises. Also, the movie strangely gets better as it goes on. Like, I kind of hated the first act of this movie, and then the second act's kind of about the same. And then the third act kind of picks up at least. Not enough to say, see this movie. But enough to go, okay, maybe I don't hate this movie as much as I did when I first watched it. Also, there's a lot of impressive camera work throughout the entire movie. There's, like, this one take that lasts for several minutes about the burglars breaking in, and the little girl tries to, like, hide and, like, turn off lights and such. That I thought was impressive. Other than that, this movie, I kind of don't like some things that happen in this movie. First off, the bad guys in this movie, they're just very generic. They don't really have any personality other than they're creepy and they're disgusting and they're just bad guys. They're just, at least in the first Don't Breathe, you kind of like get a sense of like why these people are breaking into this guy's house, and you get a sense of him and his life. At least you kind of understand like what they're like before this movie. This movie is like, he has a daughter now, and these people are just bad because they're bad. I just thought it didn't work that way. Also, even though like in the first movie, there are some times where I thought that was kind of clever and that was fun with like the way like there was attacks and like they had kind of use household objects to defend themselves or fight or whatever. In this movie, it just feels like, it kind of feels like the blind man lured from Kevin McAllister from Home Alone. It just did not work for me. It just crossed into too many, it just crossed into a realm of unbelievability. And even with the first movie, yeah, surprising. Again, it also took a while for me to get into this movie. Admittedly, for the first act of this movie, I just didn't care about anything that happened. It just felt like stuff was happening, but nothing interesting was really happening. I had a lot more questions about how things happened before this movie, and yeah, it just didn't work. Also, there's a lot of moral questions in this movie that I feel like the movie just didn't really live up to, unfortunately. It does ask some interesting moral questions, but I feel like the end result is just not really that great. I feel like at the end, they just didn't deserve it, if you know what I mean. They didn't earn like a lot of things that happen in this movie. It's kind of hard to review this movie without spoiling it. So I just feel like it would have been better if it felt like the character involved actually cared about was happening and what happened to him in the past and what he did in the past, it didn't work for me. It was an interesting question without proper execution, unfortunately. So, Don't Breathe 2 is an unnecessary sequel. It's not as fun or as intense as the first movie. It's not as clever. The characters aren't nearly as good. Although there are some good performances and there are some good camera work throughout the entire movie, it just did not really work for me as a whole. I can't even say, like, if you enjoyed the first one, you'll enjoy this one. I can't even say that because I like the first one. But this one, no. I'll give Don't Breathe 2 out of 4 stars. Stream it. So, what has been your favorite horror sequel recently? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat, and stay safe.